just contrary to that, there is the Whig view, the American Revolution had certain values that inherent in it were the civil rights values, right? It wasn't immediately evident. And then you read back, all men were created equal. There does seem to be, there's some kind of providence here. Like the American story has unfolded with an internal dialectical logic. And like people trained in Marxist interpretations of history can see this very plainly. But it's not really surprising when you consider that Masons founded the country and the Enlightenment philosophy was always based on an esoteric aspect that was explicitly aimed at social engineering and world domination. So the fact that it has gone in a direction compatible with this kind of Kalergi ideal of the mass kind of worker class that is egalitarian in a certain sense, and then the enlightened kind of ruling elite, it's not surprising because that was basically the model. They've just developed in terms of their relation with the subject population. Like, really, it gets started with industrialization in England. Like, when do working classes really get stomped underfoot? When do they work all these hours? When is their quality of life lessen? It's during the Industrial Revolution, the lead up to it. And then that condition is passed on from the English to the other European former serf classes onto colonial populations. And it's instrumental in terms of the objectives of the elite that you have this gradual enfranchisement. And it's very clever to frame something as bringing people into this egalitarian system when the system itself is a form of slavery and was developed as such. So like the progress of the egalitarian narrative, there's an internal logic to it that's consistent through history. It had to go this way. I think it kind of did because it was by design more or less from the beginning. I'm more of a conspiracy theorist than you are. So I would say by the time of Elizabethan England, these sorts of long-term social engineering projects and aims at, global empire were being concocted, but further back than that as well in different esoteric spheres, in different groups.
Right. Well, the idea of, creating a global empire is, I think the Austro-Hungarian emperor at one point had some sort of title or slogan that was implied. It was like Ordo something, whatever, because they were gobbling up territories anywhere they could. And, if they hadn't at one point been, encroached upon by Russia and Germany, they would have just continued to buy up territories in Sicily and Spain and the Netherlands, and they had nothing to do with those populations. But the will to do it was there. Simply their technique and strategy wasn't optimized to compete with the other empires that were surrounding them. But if you can optimize your strategy and you can coordinate among different empires to get that to go, I mean, it's the idea of like, nobody wants to take over the world. That's a conspiracy theory. It's like everybody wants to. I want to take over the world. I just don't have the capacity to do it. If I had the capacity, if I was in the position, of course the will would express itself that way naturally. So it's almost a denial of human nature, in the same way that it's a denial of human nature to, the systematic, doctrinal, ideological, suppression blanket that is weighing further on society is here's a new way that we have to kind of deny human nature, pretend it doesn't exist. Oh, of course, people aren't like this, and of course, we can retrain and reformulate everyone to be a different way. And it's like, in some ways we can, but that we're no longer human at that point. Like, we're a different species. We are much more similar to the ant colony or the beehive at that point. And maybe we are capable of truly changing our genetics so quickly or something like that, or the brain is so plastic that it can be reformulated, but it is a different thing. It is not who we were in the past.
Right. I think that kind of denial of biological nature, denial of natural hierarchies, feeds into the suppression of philosophy in this kind of Orwellian dynamic where you have to convince the person that 2 plus 2 equals 5 or can equal 5 so that they can never develop mathematical rational understanding of things. You have to get people to believe obvious blatant contradictions and authoritatively just push it down people's throats through propaganda their whole lives. And then if they absorb those beliefs, how are they ever going to develop systematic philosophy?
Right.
Because beliefs tie into another. Like, you can't coherently, rationally believe in evolution really in a systematic way if at the same time you hold these beliefs about